Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Average Joe's Sports Talk Saturday morning recap show. Here to recap all of the action from Week 7. It's the 8th week of the year, but 7th week on the AHSAA schedule because of Week 0 counting. So 8 weeks now done in the books, Bo. And, we talked about it a little bit on Tuesday night. It's just crazy. You get to this time of year and it happens so fast. We look forward to football season. It's no disrespect to any of the other sports. Man, I coach baseball. I love basketball. It's just something different about football season in general, whether it's high school, college, NFL. And you look forward to it all year. Next thing you know, you snap your fingers. We're 8 weeks into this thing.
Yeah, it's incredible, man. And before we get started, Caleb, sorry about your Braves, but you got to give props to the Phillies. Just go and get that out there.
Yeah, I saw you in your Phillies gear last night.
I wore that for you last night, by the way.
I bet you did.
I said I got to wear my Bryce Harper startup kit just for Caleb tonight. But anyway,
you're
right,
start
Caleb.
Supporting local high schools on that show and wearing high school stuff.
I can't do that because I used to do that. I used to wear shirts that was given to me by coaches or whatever, and then I got hammered by every other school I walked into. So I can't do that. Then I started wearing schools like Catholic shirts that Juice would give me. Then I started getting hammered for not wearing local schools. I was like, well, okay, that's it. No more wearing school gear of any kind anywhere because I'm gonna get hammered one way or another. So, but yeah, Caleb, the leaves are starting to turn. The grass is getting ready to stop growing, and it's amazing, brother. We're essentially like 2 weeks away from the playoffs. It's incredible. And I was doing region breakdowns last night up here for North Alabama on our show, Final Drive, and just looking at some of the scenarios that could still possibly happen. There's so much meat on the bone that's about to transpire over these next 2 weeks. It was hard to kind of predict when I did, but I gave a kind of a diagram of what's going to happen up this way. But yeah, I'm ready to get this show going today. I'm fired up about this. I don't know. There's something in the water this time of year that gets, if you cover high school sports, that really gets your juices going.
And we want to thank our sponsor here with us today, Rohogo Vacation Rentals. Make sure to check out Rohogo Vacation Rentals if you're looking to vacation around Northeast Alabama, whether it's Gadsden, Gunnersville, anywhere up in the mountains up there. They'll take care of you. They'll point you in the right direction to get the best place to stay and do a great job with it. And we appreciate their support each and every week, whether it's right here on the Saturday morning recap show, the Road to the Blue Map on Tuesdays, or any of the other things that we do here with Average Joe's. We couldn't get it done without our great sponsors and people like Rohogo Vacation Rentals who allow us to be here each and every week. If you've seen us on the screen so far, you're wondering, hey, where's Corey LaBounty? He will be coming, so we will have Corey on here in a little bit. Corey's doing, like we said last week, Corey does a lot of different stuff in his radio station he works for, that he has a show for. They're doing an event this morning for the Alabama-Arkansas game that's coming up very shortly in about 90 minutes. So he's doing that, and will jump on with us here in probably about 15, 20 minutes. And so we'll have him on, and, definitely want to talk with Corey about Mary Montgomery and Baker down there that happened in the Mobile area last night, a huge 7A game that really had a lot of implications. And the winner of that one is going to be the team that everybody's going to be talking about. Hey, can we get them to finally be one of those teams to come out of the South and, not have Phoenix City or Auburn, which has just been those two teams here recently for a long time. So getting into some of our scores, Thursday night, I had Benjamin Russell and Pelham. Big win for Benjamin Russell. Me and Bo went to Benjamin Russell Pelham last season at Pelham, and it was a good game. Benjamin Russell didn't necessarily play very well in that game last year, and ended up paying the price for it because they ended up traveling in the first round instead of being able to host in the first round, and had to go to Hueytown, and ended up being a tough matchup. So they kind of understood the importance of this game, and a big win for them. If they beat Briarwood now this next week, it could set up for them to be able to beat Helena, and you could either have a three-way tie at the top, or if Homewood ends up getting a loss, then you would end up having Benjamin Russell and Helena playing for a region championship. Should be a big one there. Carver Montgomery 38, Wetumpka 7. Big win for Carver Montgomery, Bo. They seem to kind of be getting things going here at the right time. We know they're already dangerous, and then now you're about to combine Sidney Lanier in there with those guys. That they're going to be a fun team to watch here in the future.
Well, they produced 2 5-stars last year.
Yeah.
And then this year, a lot of people was kind of, I'm not going to say shocked, but they were pleasantly surprised in this part of the state when Gadsden City handled them early in the year like they did, opening game of the year. But since that time, you're right, Corey, they've kind of turned the corner. And I don't even want to talk about the merger that's coming because that's going to be in every sport something to behold. There's you somebody that can challenge from the South when those two hook up. I can promise you that.
Big win for Geraldine, 30-7 over Westbrook Christian. You knew it was going to kind of be tough, I feel like, for Westbrook Christian, just the emotions of what last week was, playing against Piedmont, all of that. Now you got to get up and play one of the top 5 teams really in 3A in Geraldine, and just really was a tough go, I think, for Coach Steve Smith and his group last night. And it was a tough ask to get back up emotionally to try to play that game, especially on a short week, playing this one on Thursday night.
Yeah, that was an interesting game, Caleb. I was there. It was 7-14. They were inside the 5, about to score. Late in the third, they ran a reverse to a receiver who threw a pick 6, which eventually broke their back. What happened when he picked that ball off and ran it, it's kind of like you could see the wind come out of their sails. And they was like, man, instead of this thing being 14-14 late in the third, now we're down 21-7. And then they got a score or two there at the end that capped it off for them. But, yeah, they kind of pulled away, going away late, Geraldine. And that's what good teams are supposed to do. Kudos to them for doing that on the road on a short week on a Thursday night.
And not only that, when we've talked about it each and every week, you better go ahead and get Westbrook right now. I mean, because you can see it. They're getting better, and they're still improving as this year goes on. And you better get them while you can right now because
their facilities and their coach.
Yeah,
with their facilities, their buy-in, and their coach, you better get them now. You're right. You're exactly right.
Looking at some other scores from Thursday, Gordo over Fayette County, 35-6. Hanley, they dominate Talladega, no surprise there, 51-13. Lochapoka, big one over Otaugaville. They're going to be the Thursday night game of the week. This coming week, they'll take on Maplesville. That'll be a really fun 1A football game. And it'll be, if you watch those games every week, it'll be cool to me to go from what you had at the Sportsplex this past week, this big place that seats a bunch of people and 6A programs to now you get to showcase the 1As and you showcase the lower, teams in this in the state of Alabama, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Now, Lochapoka's doing some things at their home field, so I think they're actually they're playing the rest of their home games this season at Beulah, which is still about a 35 minute drive for Lochapoka to get out there. So it won't necessarily it won't be a home game for them, but it's listed as a home game on the schedule, but they're basically going to play a neutral site game with Maplesville Thursday night, and should be a fun one. I mean, Maplesville has a ton of history, and Lochapoka seems to have some athletes, and Coach Rico Newton seems to be having those guys going in the right direction so far this year. Mars Hill over Phil Campbell, 62-6, just a dominant win for them. Moody over St. Clair County, really the first time this year we've seen the Moody offense explode the way that we would see it explode, almost every week last season. And, I think they lost some guys. They've been trying to build up to that, and it finally paid off, a huge win. 60-0 there for them Thursday night. Pisgah over North Sand Mountain. Hey, look, you got to give Pisgah credit. They easily could have let North Sand Mountain hang around in this game, and you're not focused on this game right here. You're looking to next week. They went out there and they took care of business on Thursday night, and they set up the big showdown with Fife that, we'll talk about on Tuesday night. We'll road to the blue map, and might be the game of the week. You never know. We'll end up seeing. So, Spanish Fort over McGill. We talked about this game during the week on road to the blue map. 41-19, good win for Spanish Fort. They seem to kind of be getting things going now. They didn't score very much against Saraland, got blown out. Didn't score very much against Theodore, got beat 8-3 in that game. And since then, they've figured out something offensively. They're starting to score points and starting to get things going down there. St. Michael over Wilcox Central. Philip Rivers getting a big win there, 45-6. Theodore over Blunt, 35-0. Winona over Hayden, 49-7, and then Westminster Christian over Madison County, 48-7. My brother told me Westminster Christian may have one of the best quarterbacks in the state that people aren't really talking about, and he said they got a guy that can sling it around and score some points up there for Westminster Christian.
Yeah, and they look really good, and they're leading that region. They pretty much won that region, but I'm interested to see them because I haven't seen much on them. But I know one thing I have seen is their scores. They've been pretty dominant this year, and I think after breaking those regions down last night, they're walking away with that region.
So we'll get into scores from last night on Friday. Andalusia over Slocum, no surprise there, 42-6. Big win for ARAB last night, and they had kind of been. It almost felt like they got off to a good start and had kind of been sleepwalking through the middle part of this season. They woke up last night. They dominated Boaz 63-35, and had to be a huge win there for Coach Osment and his group, and a little bit of relief to finally just get away from somebody and really dominate a good football team the way that they did Boaz last night.
Yeah, funny thing about them, Caleb. If you're a coach, you're in a perfect scenario. You know why? Nobody talks about you.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's talking about Gunnersville first, Scottsboro a clear second. Don't even mention them. But I got news for you, Caleb. If they could somehow pull that one out at Gunnersville next week, guess what happens? It kicks it to a three-way tie with Gunnersville and Scottsboro. A three-way tie with one loss each in that region. And then that's when the chaos ensues, my friend. So all eyes will be on that game when they play Gunnersville. And if they can somehow win that one, it's going to kick a three-way tie if everybody wins on out in that region. And then we'll have to get into the tie-breaking point breakers after that to see, how that thing could transpire. They could mathematically would still be alive for a shot at the region title. We'll have to go back in and look at it because their only loss was to Scottsboro. And Lee Osmond this time of year, this is when he gets his guys, but that's when he gets his guys dialed in. So it's not gonna be a cakewalk for Gunnersville. That's gonna be a good football game.
Austin over James Clemens last night, 28-7. I think Austin is, one of the better teams in that Huntsville region, but we talk about it each and every year. We got to see some of those Huntsville teams beat, some of these teams from Birmingham. And, we'll talk a little bit more about that Birmingham region. They had a big game last night, Hewitt and Vestavia, and we'll talk a little bit about that here when we get to that score later on. BB Comer 35, Thorsby 13. Comer looked like they kind of sleptwalked through this game last night. It was 15-7 at halftime. They end up pulling away, scoring 20 in the second half. And, look, for Comer right now, Bo, I think they're starting to feel the playoffs getting closer. That's what they've really kind of been building up towards. And so you may get them maybe not playing their best here at the end of the season and maybe just looking ahead a little bit to the postseason and, where they want to get back to and then get back to a state championship and this time come away with a blue map.
I went and talked with Coach Fawcett this week on my way back from Alex City, and he was out there mowing grass, and the Powder Puff game was going on. He said, "Hey, Bo, guess what? It's homecoming week. So guess what's not happening? Focusing on football." He said, "Our eyes and what everybody's doing is focused on everything but football this week."
Yeah.
And as a coach, you hate homecoming for that simple reason. His guys was out there coaching a Powder Puff game when I showed up. So it was just one of those games. You're right, Caleb, where at this point they know what they got. And it's going to take certain teams to draw it out of them, and it's there, and people are going to get it down the stretch. But I could see where he's coming from. It's a difficult week to coach this time of season when you're a number one team and you're rolling like they are.
We'll talk about Corey with this game when he jumps on. BC Rain over UMS Wright last night, 31-21. That one surprised me a little bit there with UMS falling. It's been a tough year for Coach Terry Curtis and his group, and you're not used to seeing that from UMS, and been that way with a few programs that we've seen. 5-6 years ago, there's some of Hoover, UMS, some of these that have struggled this year. I mean, you couldn't have ever told Piedmont, even with how their season's gone, you couldn't have told anybody that these programs would have these type of seasons this year, and it's just weird to see. So we'll talk with Corey about that when he comes on.
One of their wins was also a forfeit win, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So it's it's strange, and what's funny is Danny Horn's hot on his trail for the all-time record now. I mean, seems like each week he's gaining some ground. So that's an interesting little race right there, and all in itself.
Nah, yeah, it is. Surprising game here. Beulah 26, Childersburg 16. I saw Beulah and Davil last week. Davil handled Beulah pretty easily. They're going to get Childersburg next week. Childersburg looked like they had been getting better. They beat Mumford, they beat Vincent this year, and then have gotten a couple of good wins and competed in some other ball games. So, good win for Beulah last night. And the biggest thing that hurt them against Davil, they just didn't execute. They made some mistakes, and once they execute stuff, or we were talking about in the booth, if they'll not get penalties and not make mistakes during the plays, they could score some points and hurt some people, and it looked like it worked out for them last night. A good win for them. Bibb County 34, Montevallo 0. Good win there for Bibb County, who has done a good job of bouncing back after that loss to Andalusia. They hadn't let that affect them, linger over. They've played really well these last 2 weeks and are still building themselves up to be one of those teams competing there at the end in 4A South, where you're going to have 7, 8 teams who, if the ball just bounces the right way, they could all be there playing for a state championship. It's loaded there in 4A South. Bob Jones over Sparkman Briarwood. They beat Calera 38-0, so sets up a big matchup with Benjamin Russell at home on Friday night. And we do got Corey jumping on now, so we're going to get Corey on the screen and talk to him. Corey, we were just talking about, we got it right here on the screen. BC Rain last night, 31-21 over UMS Wright. Just tell us a little bit about that game and how surprising was that last night for you people down there in Mobile to see that result in UMS getting beat by BC Rain?
Really no surprise in my eyes. 1 week ago, I had BC Rain at home versus Centronel in a 5A region game. And Centronel's a much improved team, but 1 week ago, you could see all the glimpses that the only team that was really going to beat BC Rain was BC Rain and is BC Rain. Now, in that win that they had against the Centronel Wildcats, they had 160 yards worth of penalties, and they still won the game by close to 35 points. Now, that's one of the things that I knew they had to clean up going to UMS Wright, because speed and athleticism and size, BC Rain has all the above, and I knew they would give UMS Wright all they can handle. Terry Curtis, he's not called the GOAT for nothing. You knew he was going to come with the game plan and execute, but Coach Lawrence Yelding and his guys, when you have a running back that is 200 and probably 40 pounds, but can run a 40-yard dash in 4.5, that type of speed presents problems. Their strength and their length up front presents problems for UMS, right? And when you start looking at the depth chart for UMS, not a lot of depth. And Rain was able to capitalize on that huge 5A Region 1 win, especially the fact that now we're in a log jam. With that forfeit, putting them at 2 region losses. Gulf Shores is in the driver's seat, but 2, 3, and 4, it is a log jam.
Bayside Academy 35, Orange Beach 14 last night. Talk a little bit about that win for Bayside Academy and talk about their year a little bit. First year without Coach Phil Lazenby being the head coach there in a long, long time. How big was that win last night for them over Jamie Dubose there in Orange Beach?
Huge. I mean, Barrett Trotter has come in and in his first year done a tremendous job, and they have a great quarterback, Sam Dunn. This young man is a young sophomore, and he got a lot of playing time as a young fella, not only in middle school on varsity, but he's really taken the reins in what Coach Trotter has taught him, and they're an outstanding team that is doing great things in his first year. No surprises there. The overall success of a tradition like Bayside Academy.
Bo, Center Point 32, Pinson Valley 19. Really good win for George Bates again last night. And, we've bragged on him, talked about him. He's just done such a fantastic job there and in a tough spot, a place that really fluctuates between 5A, 6A. They'd love to be 5A. I'd love to see what they would be like at 5A this year in there with Ramsey, Pleasant Grove, and those teams. But big win for them over Pinson last night. And they're right there in position with a chance to host playoffs in the first round.
I don't understand what else this man has to do to not get the recognition he deserves. I mean, what else has he got to do, Caleb? I mean, the guy is coaching his tail off, and we talked about it Tuesday night. It's unbelievable what this guy's doing, man. Here they are again, sitting at second place in that region, and they're going to play Oxford in a couple of weeks. And it's going to basically set up to who's going to be second in that region, because it looks, in all intents and purposes, it looks like Clay is going to win that region. Well, they got to play Oxford. They got to beat Oxford first. But if they do beat Oxford, Oxford's got to turn around and play Center Point to see who's going to host in that region. Man's coaching his tail off. He's doing a fantastic job.
Central Clay 48, Sylacauga 0. Sylacauga, I think they've lost now 20 straight or 21 straight. Just crazy to see for a program like Sylacauga to be struggling like they are. But I'm telling you, Coach Smelly's getting them there. You can tell. I mean, they had Beauregard beat last week and blew a 38-16 lead and ended up losing the ball game. And so they've been right there on the edge. But Coach Horn and them come in. They leave no doubt last night, and they stay undefeated, continue rolling. And Central Clay, one of those teams you better watch out for in 5A. there in the South. Looking at some of these other scores, Charles Henderson, a big 20-point win over Eufaula last night. That was a big win for them. Charles Henderson been struggling some this year. They lost to Carroll of Ozark very surprisingly earlier this season. And I thought Eufaula had a good chance of maybe coming in here getting a win. Very big win there for Charles Henderson, and kind of flexed their muscles on the rest of that region. Said, hey, look, I know we hadn't necessarily played to our, what people have expected us so far this year, but we're still the best team in this region and still the team that went and played for a state championship just 1 year ago. Looking at some of these other scores, Citronelle over Williamson. Corey, talk about that one. Citronelle 14, Williamson 8 last night. Citronelle, they've had a really good year so far this year. And I think the biggest thing that you have to be proud of if you're a Citronelle Wildcat fan, they're finding ways to win some of these close games this year instead of sometimes in the past it felt like they would find some ways to lose some of these games.
Well, anytime you get a coach that is a graduate of the school that they're coaching at, your alma mater, it means more to you. And he has a motto, lock the gates. He wants to lock the gates around the community and the area of Citronelle. Jason Rowell, tremendous job in year number 1. And they kind of had a disappointing game against BC Rain a week ago, but you knew that they were going to bounce back because this is a team that really kind of took the scales off of my eyes when they were up 28-7 against Viger at Viger about 4 weeks ago. And that doesn't happen by happenstance or just give me the ball and I'm going to make something. No, you don't go up 28-7 on the road against a quality opponent like Viger and not be for real. And I think them being able to bounce back from that loss to BC Rain does show that, Williamson is playing with a lot of 7th, 8th, and 9th graders. And Antonio Coleman is out with a knee injury right now, so they have an interim coach that's filling in for him during that injury. But, Williamson, they're going to take their growing pains this year, but they are young with a lot of Division I talent on that roster. But Citronelle, kudos to Jason Rowell getting it done.
Clay Chalkville 72, Huffman 0. I still don't think Huffman has scored a point this year, which is just, I can't. That's one of the craziest stats that I've seen.
Caleb, it's 454-0. I checked it last night.
Wow.
So then I scored 454-0.
Now, fellas, has that ever happened? They don't have a bye like week 9 or 10, do they? Have they already had their bye week? Because I have never seen an entire 9 to 10 week season to where 1A through 7A, you don't score a point.
Yeah, I haven't either that I can remember. I can't. 454-0. Wow. So they're averaging. They're giving up 50+ a game and not scoring a single point all year.
And then I don't think people.
It honestly looks like if Corey LaBounty got on the PlayStation sticks against me on Madden is what it looks like at this point. And I would be Huffman at that point.
Well, what's crazy about it
I'm no good.
Is they've got athletes there. There's players there, and they're going to be really good in basketball this year. So that tells you something. They're going to be really good in basketball. They're going to win games. So it's not like there's a bad culture there overall. It's just, I don't know. I've never seen anything like that where you just can't get any points on the board at any point in any game. It's almost like the teams that they're playing against are starting to take pride in, hey, we don't want to be the team that they finally score off of. So kind of got a little motivation going in every week. So looking at some of these other scores, big win for Collinsville last night, Bo, 54-0 over Eider. They've taken care of business against the teams that they should take care of business against. I think it's the results of some of the other, the bigger games they've played, the Pisgahs, Fife, some of those that have maybe been a little disappointing for them. But now you got to give them, take care of business who you're supposed to take care of business against. You find yourself in the playoffs, and Collinsville will be playing in the playoffs, and it's all you can ask for, especially when you have Pisgah and Fife in your region. That's already a tough draw to get things started. Bo, talk about this game. Coosa Christian 94, Cedar Bluff 7 last night. Obviously, a lot of stuff that went on in that Coosa Christian program during the week, having to forfeit some games that they found out about last week. You kind of hate it for Cedar Bluff and their kids because they don't, I guess, necessarily deserve to have what happened last night. But for Coosa Christian, you can also see why they felt the need to go out and really make a big point the way that they did of, hey, we can still win games without those other guys that you made us get rid of. And they showed it last night, winning 94-7.
Yeah, and he sat 12 guys on purpose as another statement of, the guys that were so-called not eligible or whatever, and not getting into all that. It's none of my business. But he specifically sat 12 guys on purpose before the game started. Last week on his coach's show that we do for him, he said, I'm gonna start playing less nice. Maybe I need to score 80 to 100 points. So he was very clear in his purpose of what his intentions were and why he was doing it. Now, the news media outlets late last night and early this morning is just crucifying who's a Christian for that score. But it was clear before the game ever kicked off what his intentions were and why he was doing it. What is not clear is who it's aimed towards. And he said who it's aimed towards before, but news outlets are reporting it otherwise. But yeah, it's unfortunate for the Cedar Bluff kids to be, like you said, to take a loss like that. But at the same time, I would rather somebody come up to me and tell me they can't stand me and they're fixing to destroy anything that I have to do with than do it behind closed doors. And the one thing I will give Mark O'Brien credit for is he said it publicly that this is coming. So if there's, in a situation like this, I would much rather have somebody do that. And a lot of people probably didn't take that serious when he said, I'm going to take the gloves off. Because, usually when I get it, he said it on the show. You can go watch the show. He said, when I get up 42, I shut it down, period. But he said, not going to do that. He said, we're going to turn the knob wide open and rip the knobs off. So that's when you see stuff like 94. I knew something was going on because I was on the air live in Fort Payne last night. And my phone looked like Clark Griswold's house. It was just lit up. I mean, I was like, what is going on? And now I seen that score. I was like, oh, here we go. I see what's going on now. It's unfortunately when you're in the media and close to, I've known Mark O'Brien for years off the field. So it's, I get asked those questions, but this is one time I can honestly say, hey, don't ask me, turn the film on. He explains it all. So it takes any kind of, anybody asking me a question, if you want to know what his thinking or mindset was going into that game, turn his coach's show on.
Mm-hmm. That's definitely a score that stands out, 94-7 last night. And hey, look, if you're Cedar Bluff, you can stop them too. You got 11 guys on defense, just like they got 11 guys on offense. So everybody gets all upset with some of these scores, but at some point you can kind of bow up and get a stop, not allow 94 points to go on the board as well. I mean, that's the way I look at it. So.
Caleb, another thing, and behind the scenes in that game, I think there was 20 personal fouls thrown in that game. 20 personal foul flags thrown in that game.
And when you're on a running clock like that,
that's one thing they didn't allow, Corey.
What?
Yeah, no, he told it before the game. O'Brien told the refs before the game, we're not going to do a running clock.
So that's one of those tough situations where you're just going to take it, you're going to swallow it, you're going to eat it, you're going to regurgitate it, and for whatever reason, like you said, I mean, what goes around comes around, but that's one that's definitely a historical whooping right there.
Yeah, it's rough. And like I said, to take me out of the equation, I tell everybody just go watch his show. He said it last week. It was coming. So I guess he wasn't playing. I mean, that's the only thing I can say about it.
Yeah. Well, moving on now. We don't talk about AHSAA scores very much, but people can see right there on the screen. Coosa Valley 56, Abbeville Christian 22. My CVA Rebels. For those that don't know, I coach baseball there at Coosa Valley Academy AHSAA school. They finally got their first win of the season last night. They scored more points last night than they had scored all season. So I just want to give them a shout out. Big win for them. And
that's huge for them, man.
It's huge. And here's the way I look at that too. While they've had a rough year, you got to give the kids a ton of credit. It'd be easy to quit. I mean, you've lost 8 games up to this point, and to go out there and still be playing hard and find ways to win games, I mean, it says a lot about them. It makes me happy. It knows I've got some competitors coming to me in the spring when we play some baseball games. So good win for them last night. Corner 42, Oak Grove 13. We're going to have Oak Grove and Dora in 2 weeks as the Thursday night AHSAA game of the week. And, look, good win for Corner last night. It's a good Oak Grove team that they beat. And, takes a little bit, I guess, away from that matchup. But you can see on down the screen there, Dora beat Hamilton 62-40. So Chavis Williams and his group continues rolling. Talk about this one here, Corey. Daphne 16, Fairhope 13 last night. Huge win there for Daphne, and Fairhope's just kind of they've had a weird year. They've struggled a little bit so far this season.
Yeah, they have. And when you do look at that win for Kenny King, it's huge. He had a couple of huge transfers come in, and they have really reinvigorated his program. And it doesn't matter how or where or when you get those transfers, as long as it's a bona fide move and the kids are eligible, they can continue to help get wins. And Daphne, when you look at their loss to Spanish Fort earlier, that was a non-region contest. It's a community contest, one that you like to have for Brad. But now what it does set up, it sets up MGM and Daphne, both teams, one undefeated in MGM, Daphne with the one region loss in 7A. The winner takes all basically next week in that matchup. So that was a huge win for Kenny King and them, finding a way to beat Tim Carter and the Fairhope Pirates. Again, Daphne and Fairhope, those two schools kind of split back in the day, and it's part of that Baldwin County rivalry series that's really good.
Big win there for Daphne last night. Davidson, they get a win over Park Crossing 21-12 as well last night. Decatur Heritage over Woodville 21-6. Bo, is it looking like Decatur Heritage probably going to win that region with Coosa Christian now with the forfeit and everything?
Yeah, it is. They got the win over Valley Head as well, and it looks like they are probably going to go ahead and win that region. The interesting thing is now with the forfeit wins, it's going to be who's going to be third and fourth in that region. If Coosa wins out, and all intents and purposes, they're going to finish third, and it's looking like Appalachian's going to finish fourth, and then Valley Head second. And shout out to Nikita Stover because, I mean, after that loss to Coosa, 48-0, you thought, man, I guess this separated if they were real or not. And then you turn around and look, and now with that forfeit win, now they're in the driver's seat. And as well as I know, when you get in those playoffs and you host first round, that's a whole nother ball game than when you go travel to a 2 or a 1. So that's a big time thing right there for them. That win over over Valley Head, that is huge for them.
Corey, we saw kind of the same situation with Mobile Christian. I can't remember if it was last year or 2 years ago where they had to forfeit some wins, and some one seed out there got really unlucky and had to play them in the first round. And it looks like Coosa Christian's going to be in the same boat where they're going to finish 3 or 4, and I feel bad for whatever 2 seed or 1 seed has to match up with them in the first round because they should be a 1 seed. And so you're basically having to play what is the 1 seed, but because of all just how everything that's happened, it really puts it. Coosa Christian's going to get in still, even with the forfeit. So it really doesn't punish them that much. It's going to punish whichever team they end up matching up with in the first round because they're sitting here like, man, we just had a great season, and our reward is we play a team that should be the 1 seed from another region. So we saw that with Mobile Christian. They ended up going on a big run a couple of years ago there in the playoffs.
Last year, all the way to the semis.
Yeah, last year.
Take away those wins at the right time and give the team a chance to get that second or third win within a smaller region. Exactly what happened. You're right. Asterisk, don't get caught as fans looking at the record. You got to do your homework and be prepared because it's a storm coming.
Dothan over Enterprise last night, 21-14. So that starts to settle out who's going to be the 3 seed and the 4 seed in that region. That's a tight race there. You got 5 teams competing for. Or really 3 teams now competing for 2 spots. I think Auburn, Phoenix City are going to finish 1 and 2, especially with Auburn's win over Opelika. But you basically got Enterprise, Opelika, and Dothan now all competing for 3 and 4 in that region. And it will be very interesting to see how that shapes out because it's going to have a big effect on them matching up with that Mobile region down there and, who Daphne ends up playing in the first round and who, MGM ends up playing, Baker, all those teams as well. So, will be very interesting to see how all of that shapes out, but a good win for Dothan. Last night, a big rivalry win. Elmore County also gets a win over Beauregard. They struggled. They came out the gate struggling 7-6. At one point in that game, Beauregard was up, and Elmore County ends up pulling away from them. Looking at some other scores, Bo, huge win for Etowah last night. They needed it. We talked about on Road to the Blue Map, while their record isn't maybe what their fans want and what that community wants, their region record is, where they want it, because they're now in very good position to be right there in the postseason and having a chance to go and compete. And that's all you can ask for. And they're a group that they can get hot at the right time. They're in 4A North, which it's not a knock on 4A North, but it is not as strong as 4A South. And you get the right matchups, play well at the right time. Etowah is one of those teams that can make a run.
And you know how competitive they are, Caleb. They won the state in baseball last year.
Yeah.
And a lot of those kids are on this team. And guess what? Their coach is actually coaching them now, Blake Bone, who stepped in as the interim coach there at Etowah to finish this season out. And you're right. They're one of those dark horse, nobody's talked about them, all the things that have transpired over there. But again, Corey just said it a minute ago, you got to do your homework. You got to look at that region record. Don't look at that overall record. They got athletes over here. Jameson Sism is as good an athlete as anybody in Northeast Alabama. He can get hot at different times. I think if you're an Etowah guy, which I did go to school there, so I guess you could consider me an Etowah guy, what you're wanting to see down the stretch is that consistency. Now, you got a big one looming here pretty soon with Cherokee County, and that's going to be a measuring stick, and that's a tall task to beat them. But everything in front of you is still there in front of you for a reason, and that is you kind of control your own destiny in getting into these playoffs and where you seed in these playoffs. So yes, kudos to the community of Tala. Jeff Colgrove, superintendent over there, has done a really good job. I think Blake was a really good hire to bring that community together to go down this stretch run of this football season.
And Ryan McElwain comments on here, said Elba and Georgiana was a game of 1A top 10s, and it was. And Elba, they ended up coming out on top in that one, a big win for them. They got, we talk about every week we mention guys who go, he may be the best running back in the state. He may be the best running back. Well, Elba's got a guy, he may be the best running back in the state. And, you got a guy like that at that level, and it makes a big difference.
He's going to Alabama, ain't he?
No,
going to Alabama?
No, not going to Bama, but I can't. I'd have to go back and look at his offer list. I don't think he's committed anywhere yet. Ryan, if you know in the comments, let us know. But I don't think he's committed anywhere yet. Now, Bama does have a guy that's from that area down there. He was at Geneva County a couple of years ago, Emmanuel Henderson. He plays wide receiver for them now. He was a running back down there that was one of the top 2 running backs in the country a couple of years ago, and Alabama moved him to wide receiver. Corey, Foley 35, Alma Bryant 22. Important win for Foley last night, and I'm surprised. I kind of figured that Foley would score more points in games than they've scored in a lot of the games that I've seen so far this year. I mean, MGM held them to 7 earlier this season. The only time they've really exploded the way I expected them to was against Baker that night, but still a good win for them last night, and sets them up. They're more than likely going to be the 3 seed in that region down there. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a tough draw. Again, you look back 1 year ago, 7A Region 1's 1 seed was the Foley Lions, and you have a Dothan team, a 4 seed, come down here and knock off Derek Scott and the Foley Lions. So, when you start looking at the dynamics of 7A Region 1 and 7A Region 2, I just know that it's been tough here for our Mobile schools to find a way to beat those 7A Region 2 schools. And I think that has a lot to do with the shakeup upcoming next year with different regions in different parts of the state playing other teams. But Foley still does, you're right, Caleb, have explosiveness, power with Colton Nero, the powerful running back who has exploded and led the state in rushing through the first 5 or 6 games. And then you have Perry Uno Thompson, who can get it done at any time. So I think that Foley can, if they're able to put 4 quarters together, they can compete and beat any team in the state of Alabama. They just consistently putting it together for 4 quarters has been their struggle.
And Bo Ryan did comment. He said he is a verbal commit to Alabama, so I missed that. I didn't even know that. So
yeah, I thought he had.
Now that I know that, I think he is the best running back in the state. So I'll say that.
Somebody's got to take off their crimson glasses.
Fort Payne over Hazel Green last night, 35-14. They didn't score as many points as I thought they were going to score, honestly, against Hazel Green, but a good win. And, hey, good for the defense. We saw the defense get them beat a week ago, giving up 49 points. They step up. They hold Hazel Green to 14. It's a Hazel Green offense that had started scoring, a little bit. I know they got shut out against Gadsden City, but had started to build up some momentum, figure some things out. So Good for Fort Payne and their defense last night, being able to hold them to 14. And but that lost 2 weeks ago, that puts them in a tough spot. They were pretty much going to be the 2 seed in that region, running away with it, and that loss now kind of put them in a bind a little bit.
It did, but they're Caleb. In all intents and purposes, I looked at that region last night, and Lee of Huntsville, who would have the head-to-head with them, plays Gadsden City next week.
Mm.
And on paper, Gadsden City's going to be favored there. So Fort Payne's essentially in a win or go home situation. If they lose, they can be left out. If they win, they can finish the 2nd seed. If Gadsden City handles business over Lee of Huntsville, that's a lot of ifs and cans and shoulds and coulds. But that's the way that's kind of shaking out from what I seen last night, breaking that region down.
Hey, look, Sandrock.
They can do it. So go ahead.
No, yeah, they can. Fife over Sandrock, 47-0, sets up huge matchup with Pisgah this week. One of the biggest matchups in the state coming up between those two teams. A rematch of semifinals last year there in 2A, and really looking forward to seeing how that one. I know Pisgah's had that one circled, and they've been looking forward. But you got to give Coach Pruitt a ton of credit, because sometimes you have games circled, you look ahead to stuff, you don't play as well during the year as you need to play. They've still played very well week in and week out, and they've set it up to where this is, I could argue it's the biggest game in the state next week between those two teams.
Yeah, Caleb, here's the scary part about this game, Caleb. Logan Anderson's healthy. Yeah. If you've seen that run he had on the sidelines against Collinsville last week, you know what his stat line was last night, Corey LaBounty?
What did he run for?
2 carries, 98 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then he went and sat down.
Efficient.
He's back. That makes that game a lot more interesting, but it ain't just him. That offensive line, coaches moved guys around and they plugged and played, and he's got that line kind of cohesive now that had its struggles against Geraldine. Look, even in the Geraldine game, they only gave up 135 total yards, but they lost the football game. So the defense was there during that game, but then you turn around and now coaches moved some guys around and put some guys in different positions and figured out his rotations, and now they're peaking at the right time. But man, Pisgah they look unbeatable at sometimes, man. Yeah. They're just senior laden. I think they got 14 guys, seniors or so on that team, and they're deep. They got a full roster of guys. I believe they got around 60 guys, and that's a lot in 2A. So they have some guys that can get some breathers on the sidelines, and he's a very steady quarterback, and they're coached so well. Man, DeKalb County, if you want to sit down at that game at 5 next week, you probably want to get there 2 hours early. If not, you're going to be standing, and it'll be 4 deep on the fence up there.
Gadsden City 42, May Jemison 13. They keep rolling. Ollie Smith, they've taken care of business against the teams that they were expected to take care of business against this year, and they've competed in the other games. Outside of Hartselle, outside of Hillcrest Tuscaloosa, they've been in every single ball game. They played Hewitt-Trussville better than Vestavia played Hewitt-Trussville last night. So, that tells you a little bit something about them as well. And I think Gadsden City is one of those starting to click at the right time, and they could be very dangerous in the 6A playoffs on down the road. Gardendale 61, Minor 49. Not a lot of defense played in that game last night. But Coach Chad Eads, I know he's happy getting the W there and getting a win. It's been a tough year for Gardendale, but from what I've been told, they're a young group who they're building back up, and you'll see Gardendale next year right back up there competing the way that we have seen them here recently. Corey, Gulf Shores 55, Alberta 7 last night. Just talk to us a little bit about this Gulf Shores team who's moved into number 1 in 5A, over Ramsey. And do you feel like they have the players and the athletes that if Ramsey does what they're supposed to do, can they match up with Ramsey at the end of the year, athlete for athlete?
Absolutely. I just think that Gulf Shores, Mark Hudspeth, when he made that transition and came down here to Gulf Shores, you gave him the resources from a coaching standpoint. You gave him resources from a teaching standpoint, from a facility standpoint. And what he's starting to do is now he's taking that school to uncharted territory, uncharted waters out there in Gulf Shores. And they're not murky waters at all. They are crystal clear in regards to what their vision is. He's been very deliberate. You look at them last year and the competitiveness that they had against Faith Academy, and being region champions and being ranked number 1 in the state is what it is, starting to turn that program around to have them year in and year out stay at the top of the polls instead of being the doormat of 5A football, which they once were.
Yeah, big win there for Gulf Shores last night, and they keep rolling. I'm looking forward to it, and it's setting up, Bo. It's setting up for a clash of the Titans there in 5A South with Central Clay County and Gulf Shores, and I think where that game ends up happening is going to be very, very important. If it's at Central Clay, advantage Central Clay. If they have to make the long trip down to Mobile, it'll be advantage Gulf Shores, and so I'm very interested to see how all that plays out there in 5A South coming up here with those two teams. But I think it's easy to say those are the two favorites in 5A South, Central Clay and Gulf Shores, without a doubt.
Yes, you are correct on that. And that's the type of games that it's hard to bet against the man they call Danny Horn with the experience and all. And it's going that game will the tell of the tape on that's going to be, can they handle Clay's physicality up front?
Yeah.
I mean, that you ain't got it. There's no mystery. It's like Rocky Balboa. It's not like he's going to be sleet of foot. I mean, he's coming straight ahead. He's going to deliver some blows and he's going to take some blows. And he wants to know if you're going to shy down in the late rounds, and the same thing in this situation, I think. So all eyes would be centered on that line of scrimmage and the physicality of the game. If Gulf Shores can stay in there with it, because Central Clay is going to bring that physicality to them. So it's going to be interesting.
I saw earlier in our Facebook feed that Ryan Locke was in here watching. I'm not sure if he still is, but a big win over Dallas County for Hale County last night, 41-8. We've talked about it a couple of times, but he's done a really good job there at Hale County, and you can see that program starting to take some turns. He showed us around what they were building into their new weight room when we visited last year. It's finally come to fruition. They had their first workout in there the other day, and so things are starting to change a little bit there at Hale County, and Ryan Locke's been a big part of it, and so just shout out to him and what he's done there. Very, very happy for him, and the success that they've had here early. And they're another one of those groups. You better go ahead and get them right now, because I think you can see they're going to get there here soon, and they're going to be one of those teams that we're talking about a lot more. And so good for him. Very happy for him, and a big win for them last night. Hartsville over Athens, 21-14. Hartsville had the emotional game with Muscle Shoals, and I think Athens was able to kind of get them at a good time right here and played them close, but you got to give Hartsville credit figuring out a way to win that ball game and getting a win over Athens last night. So a big win for them. Headland, they beat Carroll of Ozark 52-22. That's a Carroll of Ozark team who beat Charles Henderson earlier this year. So that one that surprised me a little bit. And Headland had some issues with Pike County a couple weeks ago. They had a big fight out on the field, and both those programs got suspended. And then the AHSAA came back and said Headland is good to continue their operations on that Monday. And there was a bunch of stuff that went on with that. But Headland, 30-point win last night. Here's the one that I've been looking to get to talk about, Bo. Hewitt-Trussville 55, Vestavia 27. That score just absolutely shocked me last night. I really thought that Vestavia had a chance to win that game at home and play a lot better. Credit to Hewitt. Emotional game with Thompson. This is your chance to maybe win the region, all that. It doesn't happen. They turn around the next week, and they just dominate a really good Vestavia team last night.
I didn't see that one coming, Caleb. I really didn't. Actually, if that would have happened and you was to ask me which team I thought had the capacity to blow the other one out, I thought that thing would have been flip-flopped personally. Yeah. So yeah, I'm really, really interested in seeing what transpired in that game, because I was shocked. I literally was shocked. And but man, what a huge win and a huge step forward. And I believe it was you telling me they've never hosted in that region.
Yeah, they've always been behind Hoover and Thompson pretty much every year. I mean, maybe at the beginning, maybe in the early stages back in 14-15, but yeah, I mean, it's been a long time there at Hewitt since they've hosted. We lost Bo there for a second, Corey.
Okay.
Still got me and you on here, but I mean, big win last night for Hewitt-Trussville over Vestavia, getting that W. And I mean, that one shocked me. I don't know if you have been keeping up with that matchup as much. That one, it doesn't surprise me that Hewitt won the game. It's the manner that Hewitt won the game that surprises me.
And sometimes, when it rains, it pours. You look at the score, you're like, okay, it might have been closer than the score actually indicated. But anytime you come away with a 55-27 win over someone that you was expecting to be a much closer game, that's a huge win for them.
Sorry about that. Little technical difficulties.
Yeah, it's all good. But yeah, I mean, we were just talking about it's not the fact, Bo, that Hewitt won the game. It's the manner they won it. 28 points. It's incredible. Yeah, but I didn't see that one coming. So, Highland home, they got to win over Barber County 39-0. They're one of those that we'll talk about Reeltown when we get to their score in a little bit, but Reeltown has now played their two toughest teams on their schedule coming up. Luverne next week, who's 6-1, may have moved to 7-1 last night. I hadn't seen their score yet, and then they would, if they win that one, they get an undefeated matchup with Highland home for the region championship. And so, as much as we've talked about Reeltown, how they could be a team, these next 2 weeks they could end up being a 3 seed, having to travel in the first round. So, very interested to see how that region shapes out there in 2A. But I think you got 2 teams, maybe 3, with Luverne in there as well. That could be some problems for BB Comer on down the line with Highland home, Reeltown, Luverne. That region could give BB Comer some problems as we get into the postseason later on. Bo, big win for Hoax Bluff last night, 35-6 over AHSAA. That one, again, Hoax Bluff winning doesn't surprise me. It's the fact that they won 35-6 against AHSAA that surprises me.
Yeah, and what's happened to AHSAA? Starting out on fire
last year. Last year they started bad, then finished good. This year they've started great, and now aren't finishing the way that they would like to, obviously.
We looked that stat up last night. They had been beaten the previous 2 weeks. I think it was 110-12. And what'd you say this score was? 35-6?
6.
So we're looking at 140-18 in the last 3 weeks after the start they had.
Yeah, I don't know if they have an injury or
something. There's something. I mean, it may be an injury. I probably need to go right down the road here, 12, 15 miles to AHSAA High School and talk with them and see what's going on, because it's not too far from my brother's wife is actually a teacher there, so I need to find out some information. But yeah, I don't know what's going on over there, man. And it's exactly what you said. It's a role reversal of last year. But the good news is they're still sitting with a playoff seed from what I seen in the region breakdown last night. But I believe they've got to win another one, so they got to get that put together ASAP.
Running through some more scores here quickly. Homewood, they were trailing Chilton County at one point last night. They end up pulling away, winning 34-13. Hoover over Tuscaloosa County, 37-10. So that puts as bad a year as we've talked about with Hoover and all that, they're still in position to get into the postseason and get that 4 seed. And you let them in, some dangerous stuff could happen. Yeah, they could be a dangerous matchup for Alston and a couple of those teams that they're out of Huntsville. Looking down at a couple other scores, Hueytown 20, McAdory 15. Not near as many points as I expected in that football game last night, but a big win there for Hueytown. They're putting themselves in position to host again as the 2 seed, very similar to what they did last year. Hillcrest Tuscaloosa, you see at the top of your screen, they beat Bessemer City 28-0 last night. Kind of looks like they coasted through that game. They've been dominating people, but they're really good on the defensive side of the football, and I'm interested to see if they end up matching up with Saraland, how that ends up working itself out with what they've done defensively this year, and then obviously what Saraland has done offensively. That could be a big-time matchup there in 6A South when the postseason ends up rolling around. JB Pennington over Brindley Mountain last night, 63-7. Jackson, they're another team in 4A South who could make some noise, and they dominate Satsuma 49-6 last night. Big win for Jacksonville, Bo. They've really gotten it going offensively, 58-14 over Mumford, and they seem to, after that Hanley game, sometimes you can gain confidence from a loss, and it almost feels like Jacksonville has maybe gained some confidence from how they competed with Hanley that night, and it showed them, hey, we're one of those teams that can compete with some of the best in the state, and they've showed that with how they've played here recently. Leeds over Alexandria, 48-14. It just continues to be a struggle there for Alexandria this year, but you better get them right now, because Todd Ginn and company, they're going to get this thing back right, and you'll see Alexandria competing again. This was one the AHSAA network covered this game last night. Locust Fork Southeastern. Southeastern was 5-1 coming into it. You thought, hey, this may be one of the better tests for Locust Fork. 49-0, and Locust Fork, they've scored over 40 in every game. You talk about a team that can score some points. They can put it together on offense, and it seems like, Bo, they're really starting to find themselves defensively as well.
Yeah, the thing about it is, Caleb, I don't know what they're chasing per se. They're chasing a scoring record or something, but man, they have just hammering down this year offensively.
Yeah.
Kudos to them. There's something. They are just, man, they look like a machine up there. Nobody's talking about them from a state. Well, we might want to start talking to them because I'm going to tell you right now that they are looking every bit the part, Caleb. And
No doubt.
yeah, they're really, that'll be who has something to say about 5-4 Pisgah going to the state. So yeah, I agree, man. That they're hammering down, dude.
And they've got to love it too, because everybody's talking about 5 Pisgah and on. They're just sitting up there, just scoring points and being to themselves and doing what they do, and so they've got to love it. Maplesville 43, Billingsley 13. That sets up a good matchup, as I talked about earlier. That'll be your Thursday night game of the week coming up. Maplesville at Lochapoka. Lochapoka's 8-0 now on the season. Maplesville has had a great year, and so it should be a really fun matchup there in 1A on Thursday night. Corey, I've been looking forward to talking to this one with you. Mary Montgomery 35, Baker 14. What did Mary Montgomery show you last night? Did they show you enough to say, hey, this is a team that can go and upset Phoenix City and possibly be playing for a state championship later on this year?
Absolutely. They have a guy by the name of number 7, Jared Hopkins, playing the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game as a quarterback for a reason. They just don't give that type of award away if you can't play. And this young man, he scored 2 rushing touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns. His 2 passing touchdowns, he did so on 4th and goal, to where defenders were all draped at his feet. He ran out right, spun around left, kept his eyes up, and found his wide receivers on both 4th down and goal plays. And it just is a wizard with the football. Verbally committed to South Alabama. I know Kane Womack and the Jaguars are hoping they can keep hold of him, but what a huge win for Mary G. Montgomery. This is a program that hasn't won a region championship since 1985, has never, ever won a state championship in school history, have not been a region champion since there's been 7A classifications, are making all type of history, their best record in over 50 years as a school and as a program. You look at Zach Golson. Last year he started 0-4, won the last 6 games in the regular season, lost in the first round of the playoffs, and is now 8 in a row. So 14 consecutive regular season wins by the Vikings. Watch out. This team is special. They have the weapons. They have the coaches, and they are moving on up, if you ask me.
Hey, we're starving for somebody from that area down there to pop up and be. I mean, and it's not enough. I mean, I have a ton of respect for Phoenix City, for Auburn. Obviously, I do a show with Coach Etheridge every week, but just as a fan, we're starving for somebody from Huntsville, Mobile, and 7A to start making some noise and get in there and shake things up a little bit. And they seem to be one of those groups that can. And I think Baker is another one that, with the right matchups, they could make some noise and be right there. And we could finally see that Mobile region start to get things going a little bit there in 7A. Looking down at some of the other scores, Mobile Christian 34, Cottage Hill 0 last night. Good win there for Mobile Christian. Coach Ronnie Cottrell just keeps things rolling there, and then they're just steady Eddie. I mean, they don't get too high, they don't get too low, and they just keep grinding and finding ways to win football games. And you got to respect it from what he's built and what he's been able to do down there at Mobile Christian. Montgomery Catholic over Bullitt County 38-0 last night. Dominant win for them, and they just keep rolling there in 4A South, and another one that can make a lot of noise. Opelika 42, Smith Station 14. No surprise there with that football game. Opelika keeps themselves in position to still sneak in there and get in the playoffs there in 7A. You got to give Opelika a little credit. They've handled the move from 6A to 7A about as well as we've seen anybody that's moved up. Yeah, they've lost a few games and all, and I know they were playing Phoenix City and Auburn every year and challenging themselves, but they've handled the move up to 7A probably as well as anybody that's had to make that 6A to 7A move that we've seen, in the past.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you look at that classification change, sometimes can be a booger bear, and they found their dominant program, their tradition, and sometimes the tradition leads you to have success as well and not wanting to fail. And I think you tradition of Opelika football, and they're continuing it at the 7A large classification now as well.
Bo, huge win for Frank Warren and Parker last night, 13-10 over Mountain Brook, and that defense for Parker, that's what Ramsey's coach told me, Coach Jackson, when I talked with him. He was like, "Look, that defense at Parker, that's something else over there." They hold them to 10 points last night and a much-needed win, and after being a 4 seed and upsetting the number 1 seed overall, really, in my opinion, in 6A last year in Clay Chalkville, they now look to be in position to have a 1 seed this season and host in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, man, what a monumental win for Coach Warren. And getting to know him and how he runs his program and how he loves his guys. The number one thing he's doing, people talk about recruiting in the state of Alabama. There's another end to that spectrum, Caleb, and that's keeping guys at home.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he's done better than anyone before him in recent memory at Parker. Parker High School is he's kept Parker High School kids at Parker. And it's paying off for him right now. I mean, when you beat Chris Yeager and Mountain Brook, who represented 6A in the state championship game last year, and you beat them in the regular season like this in a game that means so much, you're doing your job. I can promise you that. And he's doing an outstanding job there. And I like, he challenges his kids from top to bottom, not only at practice each day, but then they go out and they schedule the Ramseys of the world for non-region games to prepare them for moments like this. And woe beyond who does the cross-region with those guys. Because 6A North, I mean, you're going to say Saraland's going to be the favorite, so to speak, but 6A North with Clay and Parker and some of these guys has some really dangerous teams.
Mm-hmm.
And this 6A North crosses, these region matchups in the playoffs is going to be phenomenal. I mean, I wouldn't want to play Mountain Brook and I wouldn't want to play Parker, either one. Because in any given Friday night, they can beat you. But shout out to Coach Warren. That is a fantastic win.
Bo, Piedmont finally kind of getting things going there. Dominant win for them last night over Glencoe. They're starting to figure themselves out offensively. I think something started clicking in that Anniston game that I had a couple of weeks ago. They just didn't execute to score enough that night. They started scoring. They scored a bunch against Steve Smith and Westbrook last week, 35 last week, now 58 last night against Glencoe. It seems that Coach Miller's got this group clicking. And we talk about teams that could sneak in and be dangerous. Piedmont's one of those teams that can sneak in and be dangerous there in 3A.
Yeah, and Caleb, they were down 12-0 in that game last night.
Wow.
And then just something clicked, and like you said, it clicked, and they just started reeling off points, and there was no answer from the other end from Glencoe. And, I hate for Coach Martin at Glencoe. I thought they took a step forward. He's had some injuries. He had some guys knocked out of the game, season-ending injuries over there that's hurt them. They had a lot of their basketball kids that didn't play last year come back out this year. And I hate it for Coach Martin and those guys at Glencoe, but you're right. And anytime you got such a young team like Glencoe does, Piedmont does, you're kind of going to see some of those things happen, Caleb. Yeah. And you're right. I watched that game you called, and from a confidence standpoint, there's something clicked in that game. And hey, we're out here competing against Anniston, who was, had a 21-point lead on Andalusia last year to go to the state championship game and ended up blowing the game. But they're out there competing on the highest level in front of the entire state on statewide television, and was more than holding their own without Rolly Pinto, who's their number one offensive threat, in my opinion. So, yeah, I agree with you. They're a dangerous team. And what if you win a region and your cross is the Piedmont Bulldogs with a 4 seed in the first round? How fun would that be?
Yeah, somebody's going to not be happy out there if they end up getting that matchup. That's for sure. Pike Road over Russell County, 63-27. Granger Shook seems to be getting things going now at Pike Road after a slow start to the season, slow start to his tenure there at Pike Road. They've kind of flipped things around, really started to play well here at the midpoint of the season. And another one of those 6A teams that could be dangerous when we get in the postseason later on. Pleasant Grove over Fairfield, 48-13. Look, after Pleasant Grove lost to Ramsey, they've been dominant since then, and that includes a win over Parker, who we just talked about. So credit to Coach LeBeau there. He's really flipped things around after that loss to Ramsey. And you almost wonder, they've had so many undefeated seasons there at Pleasant Grove. You wonder if it finally kind of just took a little bit of a weight off their shoulders. Hey, we're not playing to go undefeated. We're not playing to live up to some of these past teams. We're just playing to be who we are. And big win there for Pleasant Grove and a dominant win. They've really dominated, since that loss outside of they had a 1-point win over Parker, which just beating Parker itself was a big win for them. But since then, they've really dominated. Ragland over Winterboro, 46-26. Ragland getting things going at the right time. Corey, shout out to Stacy Mills. Prattville, big win over Jag last night, 27-0. Good win for them. Ramsey over John Carroll, 28-0. For John Carroll, you're disappointed. You lost these 2 games against Pleasant Grove and Ramsey, but these are games in the past that you were run off the field, and they were in both of these ball games with Pleasant Grove and Ramsey. And I think for Coach Will Mara, that shows him, hey, what we're doing here is working. We're still a few steps away, but what we've been doing here is working, and that's a John Carroll program that seems to really be heading in the right direction when it comes to how they've competed this year with a lot of these teams. Saraland over Baldwin County, 56-7. They just keep rolling. There's not much to talk about with them. They're going to score over 50 points. They're not going to give up very many points, and they're going to dominate their way to wins right now. I mean, there's no other way to put it. So it's this, who's going to step up and be able to beat them? You're going to have to find. I think Corey, to me, you're going to have to find Saraland on a night where Lacey's not playing well. Maybe Ryan Williams drops a couple of balls, and it's just one of those nights where they just teams are going to have a B game, C game sometimes. You just better hope Saraland brings a B game or C game when the postseason rolls around.
What Coach Kelly is scared of is they haven't had great competition since week 1 in Lipscomb. They haven't played a close game since then. And when you get into postseason play, all it takes is that one close game, and you forget how to win the close game. You forget the little things to do, like you just mentioned. And that's the only challenge that Saraland has had so far is in week 1, and it's just been a dominant fashion. And look, they'll have to play themselves. They're their biggest and toughest opponent in the postseason as well.
Yeah, I think that's what happened to Clay Chalkwell last year. They just kind of dominated all the way through, and next thing you know, Parker's punching them in the mouth a little bit.
Yep.
They just didn't answer well, and so it can happen to anybody. Bo, Scottsboro 41, Sardis 21. Big win for Scottsboro. For Sardis, they've had a good season. B.J. Brooks' first year there, I think, but a result like this, the 3-point loss to AHSAA, a couple of these, it just shows them, hey, we're doing good. We're going in the right direction, but we're still just a couple of steps away from being one of those elite teams that we want to be.
Yeah, I was actually attended that game last night and hung out with Ryan Morton. It's Eli Morton's dad, and they actually tailgate at Sardis, and phenomenal atmosphere they created there for their kids since B.J. Brooks is there. And I'm going to tell you something, big win for Scottsboro and Coach Bell to bounce back after that loss and to perform like they did on the road at Sardis last night. We had a 3% chance of rain, and all 3% hammered that field all night. It was soaking wet there. That we're real close to the Scottsboro play-by-play guys. They share the same studio in which we do our final drive show. So I sat with those guys pregame, and it was just a steady, calm win for Coach Bell, and they got that offense back rolling now. Keelan Alvarez is back healthy, and Jones at quarterback. They're just really steady, and their defense is starting to come along. And B.J. Brooks coached his tail off. Man, they're just a year or so away, but he's made strides with that program. Last year they only scored, I believe, 101 points total. This year, coming into last night, they were already at 245 on the season, and they were at 5-1 coming into that game. So those are the type of improvements you want to see in a new first-year head coach. And, I think that he's going to continue getting better. I think Scottsboro's peaking at the right time, and Scottsboro is praying for that ARAB quote-unquote upset on paper, so it'll kick a 3-way tie in that region, and then we'll have to look at the tiebreakers coming up.
Talking about people that you better, and before we get on this game, hey, Bo, quickly, big win for Section last night, 21-20 over Whitesburg Christian. That's their second win of the year.
2 wins in a row.
Yeah, good big win for that program. So shout out to them. Yeah. Shades Valley 24, Pell City 21. You better get Pell City right now. I mean, they're in all these ball games. You can see. I mean, they're creeping up there. They did find a way to beat Center Point earlier this year, even though they got taken away. You better get Pell City right now. They're right there in all these ball games. Good win for Ruben Nelson and his group. They're there at Shades Valley last night. They needed that one and got a big one there with that win over Pell City. Spain Park 38, Chelsea 21 last night. Speaking of coaches that are doing a good job, I think you got to give Todd Cassidy a lot of credit for what he's done at Chelsea. They're in a tough spot. I mean, they made that move from 6A to 7A, and then now they may be dropping from 7A to 6A when we do them. I mean, it shows you how small they are from a 7A standpoint, and they may benefit from this. We've seen how Gadsden City's benefited from dropping a 7A to 6A, and Chelsea now getting a little taste of this region, seeing what that competition looks like. If they were to drop down to 6A next year, I think Coach Cassidy would be in a very good position there at Chelsea to compete immediately there at 6A, especially what he's been able to build there. So, but a good win there for Tim Vakakis and Spain Park last night as well, getting that win over Chelsea. Spring Garden 39, Pleasant Valley 14. Bo, talk just a little bit about this one, how big this game was for Spring Garden.
It was big, man. They needed a win like that where they have a little breathing room in the fourth quarter, coming off the loss to Cedar Bluff recently. That was a shocker to a lot of people. Anytime you can get a double-digit win and get some, some of your guys, JV guys and younger guys, some reps, meaningful reps in the game, it's huge. And I hate it for Coach Nix in Pleasant Valley, who started out 4-0, has had some bad losses lately. And, we checked in with him, Brick Boy and I did recently, and took some shots of his pregame warm-ups and stuff, and sat down and chatted with him. But man, I hope those guys can turn it around, because they were in that 3A Region 6 gauntlet forever with the Piedmonts and Ohatchees and Welborns in that region's prime, and then they finally go to 2A, and then this is happening. So it's hopefully he can get that ship straight. Coach Ragsdale's getting these wins, and they're looking forward to. And here's an interesting fact for you, Caleb. If Spring Garden can beat Raglan in a couple of weeks, it looks like they're going to be the number 2 seed in that region, which means they're going to be the ones hosting Coosa in the first round.
Oh,
yeah, at Spring Garden, which they played over there earlier this year. So
you almost may want to. You almost may want to go ahead and lose and just be the 3 seed.
Go the road, yeah. You'd have to go on the road to Valley Head then at that point. So yeah, in that situation, I agree. That's going to be interesting to watch if they can beat Raglan. The winner of that game will host Coosa if Coosa continues to win. Coosa's got to do their business. But that's what we're looking at in these region crosses right there.
It was a great start to the year for Lincoln. They've kind of started to hit a little bit of a wall here at the midpoint of the season. Springville beats them 38-20 last night. But you can tell us the Lincoln program's starting to get going in the right direction. Springville's another one that they're getting going in the right direction. They've had a good year, and it started out with that win over Etowah to get things rolling, to get the year going, and they've been competitive in every ball game since. St. James, you're defending 3A champs. They had a dominant rivalry win over Trinity last night. Trinity came into that game undefeated. They beat them 47-8 last night. And then Corey, talk about this one. St. Paul's 54, Robertsdale 14. Had to be a big one there for St. Paul's, who hasn't necessarily had the year that they're used to having as a whole this season.
Anytime you get a region win, it's huge. Robertsdale dismissed their head coach. He's the athletic director, Kyle Stanford. So Robertsdale hasn't won a game in a couple of years. So tough break for the Golden Bear fans, but St. Paul's wants to stack wins anywhere they can.
Looking at some other ones, Sweetwater 27-7 over Keith last night. Good win for them. They're another one that can make some noise there in 1A and have a chance to compete. Sylvania keeps rolling bow 42-8 over Plainview last night, able to just kind of run away with that ball game. Looking at some of these other ones, Thomasville over Excel 35-7. They're a dangerous team in 3A as they came and beat Davil on the road last year in round number 2. Thompson really put it on Oak Mountain last night. We talk about people scoring a bunch of points. I don't know if Coach Freeman and the new coach at Oak Mountain don't like each other or what, but a 67-7 for Thompson last night. Thompson's really gotten they've gotten their offense going here recently. I mean, 40 points against Hewitt last week. Hewitt had not given up double digits to anybody since Phoenix City up to that point, and then now 67 here against Oak Mountain. Seems like Trent Seaborn's starting to find his footing a little bit and really get things going at the quarterback position for them as well. Tuscaloosa Academy with a win over Winston County. You got to give them some credit. They've done a good job of making that move from AISA to AHSAA and being very competitive very quickly so far.
You get that right, man. And I watched them play Fife last year in person, and I can tell you right now they have grown men, and they got them all across the board, and they're quietly creeping along this season, and nobody's talking about them. Well, you better start paying attention to them because they look every bit the part.
Wrapping things up here with our final group of scores, Valley over Tallahassee 48-14, a good win for them last night. Viger 31, LaFleur 0 last night. Corey, Viger, I'm sure they're kind of in the same boat as Coosa Christian, where they're a little upset with the forfeit, and they've got some things to prove now after all that went on as well for them down there. And then Valley Head 37, Appalachian 8 last night. Big win there for Valley Head. And Appalachian's had a good year this year. It's just when they faced the bigger teams in that region, they've struggled a little bit with some of them, but they've still had a good year. But a big win there for Valley Head, as Bo said, that kind of sets them up to possibly be a 2C, be able to host in the first round. Wadley 34, Victory Christian 0. Good win for them. And then how about this one, Bo? Walter Welborn 30, Randolph County 25. First loss of the year for Randolph County. A big one for Walter Welborn. It pretty much locks up the region championship for Walter Welborn there in that region. And it was also big for Davil. Davil will play Childersburg this coming Friday. If they can beat them, you'll have Davil against Randolph County. The winner will be the 2 seed, loser will be the 3 seed, and that'll be a big football game out there in Randolph County in a couple of weeks.
Absolutely, man, and shout out to Coach Smith and Walter Welborn. And who's seen this coming? Caleb, quietly. It was one of the quietest
Yeah.
business type approaches you've seen to a region champion in a long time. And they steadily got it done on the field, not talking in social media. And shout out to them. That was huge for them.
No doubt. And they were trailing at different points during that game last night and found a way to win. They found ways to win. They were losing today for 12-0 and found a way to come back and win the football game. So he seems to have a group that just knows how to win, which is very important, especially when the postseason comes rolling around.
That's correct.
Looking at some of these other scores, Weaver over Sacs last night, 41-24. That doesn't happen a ton, and big win there for Weaver to get a win over Sacs. It's a Sacs team that just struggled so far this year. Weaver, I told you earlier, they seem to really be getting things going, and then I finally saw them in person, and you can tell it's a big flip from last year to this year, and so a good win there for Weaver last night. And then you can see a lot of those other scores there on the bottom of your screen. Not teams that we talk a ton about and cover a ton, but a good win for Woodlawn over Jackson Olin, 38-36 last night. Jackson Olin, they've struggled since Coach Fakakis left, and it just tells me how good of a coach Coach Fakakis is, because he had that program rolling and having undefeated regular seasons, and one of those teams that we were talking about year in and year out. And I think you give him another year or two at Spain Park, he's going to have Spain Park right there in that same conversation every single year.
I think he's got the best haircut in the state of Alabama as well, if I had to put money on it. I don't think there's any doubt about that. It looks similar to what Corey and I has going on. Got to give him a shout out for that.
All right, that's going to do it for us here on our Saturday morning recap show. Again, I want to thank Rohogo Vacation Rentals for their sponsorship of this show. Make sure to check them out if you're going on vacation. Look, if you're around other parts of the state, head up northeast Alabama. You can go get up in the mountains up there. You've got Gunnersville and the lake that you can go and visit. And Rohogo Vacation Rentals will help you find the best spot to go and stay at for any of those vacations. But don't forget about those places when you're thinking about vacationing, getting away for a weekend. Gunnersville, Gadsden, northeast part of the state where the mountains are, all that's beautiful and a great place to be. And Rohogo will point you in the right direction on where to stay. Well, guys, 8 weeks now in the books. We've got 3 more weeks of the regular season left, and we're going to start figuring out a lot of these region champions and who's traveling and who's going to be left out as well. So should be a lot of fun over the next couple of weeks. But got some college football starting out here in about 10 minutes. I know you're really looking forward to that, Bo, and excited about it. So I'm going to let you get off so that you can go and catch all the action today.
I've got new college football blood with Alex living in the house with me. He's a huge fan, so I got to feed the beast in that aspect. So I actually have been watching a little college football. Not as exciting as the MLB playoffs, I can assure you. That's been very exciting.
Yeah, they've been fun outside of one series. That wasn't very fun. The Braves and the Phillies.
Well, Corey's such a big Bryce Harper fan. He was enjoying it. Corey actually has the Bryce Harper jersey. He was going to wear on the air today. But
he's a bad man.
Hey, he is that.
Playoff Bryce Harper checked in, didn't he?
He did. There's no doubt about that. You got to give him credit the way he's played on the biggest stage now 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
So
that's when you know you're a player, when the lights are shining and you shine brighter. So that's when you know you're a player.
Another fun Saturday morning, wrapping up all these scores, getting things done. Corey, have fun watching the Bama game here in a minute, and Bo, have fun making Alex a Florida fan. Keep working on him. So we'll get him there, but. That'll wrap things up. We'll be back again Tuesday night. We'll have Road to the Blue Maps. Make sure to tune in 7 o'clock right here on Average Joe Sports Talk, Facebook, and YouTube. We'll have Road to the Blue Map, myself, Bo, Reggie Davis, and then we'll be back again next Saturday, talk about all the scores and start talking about how these regions are shaping out right here with our Saturday morning recap show. So, guys, y'all have a good day, and we'll see you again next week.